Welcome to Crossing the River, a podcast that amplifies the voices of Indigenous leaders from around the world. In each episode, they share their wisdom, experiences, and urgent advice for a world in crisis. Before we begin, know that Crossing the River takes a deliberate and distinctive approach to translation. You will hear the voices of Indigenous leaders directly. This is an invitation to listen deeply, to feel their message in their own words, and to pay attention to meaning beyond language, embracing the power behind their voices. This is an invitation to cross the river. Crossing the River is produced by the More Than Human Life Moth Project, based at the Center for Human Rights and Global Justice at NYU School of Law and 070 Podcast. The land of the midnight sun. In the northernmost region of the planet, the Arctic Circle, during the summer, the sun shines bright at midnight. In the winter, the sky is embellished by the aurora borealis. Up there live the Sámi people, the only recognized indigenous peoples of the European Union.
It's very, very special for me to come from there, but also for me being allowed from my family to being the voice in the world and express about European indigenous people, what is happening in our land, and what is the golden seed of our traditions.
Grandmother Helen Lindmark is an indigenous leader and guardian of Sápmi's tradition. She was born in a small village in the north of Sweden, 83 kilometers above the Arctic Circle, in the Sápmi region. The Arctic Circle is an imaginary line, one of the 5 major circles of latitude on Earth, and marks the boundary of the Arctic.
So I'm Grandmother Helen. I am coming from a village called Liikavaara, outside Gällivare. I was born in a very gifted family where the gift always was natural, nothing that was complicated. It was to be living aligned with all living species and nature.
The Sámi live in the region of Sápmi, what is now Sweden, Finland, Norway, and the Kola Peninsula in Russia. This is a vast land of tundra and frozen soil, of wide mountains and coastal regions rich in wildlife.
Today I walk as a voice for Mother Earth. I walk with my tradition. I'm a bridge builder in between ancestor wisdom and modern society, trying to find an understanding, trying to, in transparent way, indicate and plant seeds of who are we, where do we come from, what is the source within us.
Grandmother Helen Lindmark has represented the Sámi people at major international events, including the United Nations climate conferences, advocating for indigenous wisdom, climate justice, and legal recognition of ecocide through her involvement with initiatives like Stop Ecocide International and the Sámi Women's Forum. She also works as a trauma specialist, weaving traditional knowledge with contemporary understanding, and as a youth mentor. Grandmother Helen's voice is rooted in the ancestral knowledge of her land, one that has borne witness to the scars of human intervention.
I am born 69, and the mining started 61, and it was across the road. So I'm born with the frequency, the pulse of the mining every week.
This is a land rich in minerals like copper and gold, and thus a land vulnerable to exploitation.
And it was a small village, and I was the only girl in my age. I grew up a lot with my elders. And today that village is not existing. It has been taken by mining companies. So we have lost our roots, our home.
Her village is gone, and more mining projects threaten the Sámi territory and their way of life. Against these forces, Grandmother Helen is fighting back in her own way, voicing the undeniable connections between the people and the more than human world.
So I do many things in the spiritual realm. I'm very gifted there, but today I'm focused on giving teachings and reaching people and helping people to come home, to take their life back. And so they can be more cautious and they can also be more aware and be taking the responsibility of stewarding for the earth and the planet, because that I think is the most important. I'm located in the middle of Sweden at the moment by the high coast, and it's 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon.
Grandmother Helen is in a room with a red wall and a painting of a snowy landscape. Behind her, there are 3 large candles lit up by a window. She has short brown hair and a round, soft face, framed by red glasses that match her checkered shawl. Today, she's not in her territory. She is once again relocating as a result of the displacement of her village.
So I grew up by knowing that the seasons was very clear when I was a little girl. The winter was a winter, the summer was a summer, the spring was a spring, and the autumn was an autumn. But the seasons in between, the times, the weeks in between when the shift seasons was the most important, because there's always this to be ahead, to prepare, to be there for nature, to be there for the reindeers, to be there for the family, to be there.
Traditionally, the Sámi people have been reindeer herders. The reindeer is the most prominent animal in the region and the only semi-domesticated animal that naturally belongs to the north. Reindeer herding or husbandry is a millenary tradition central to Sámi identity. They follow the reindeer as they migrate in search of grazing lands, moving across vast landscapes in rhythm with nature. The reindeer are guided by the seasons, and in the Arctic Circle, that means 8 distinct seasons. Early spring, spring, early summer, summer, late summer, autumn, early winter, and winter. Each season brings specific changes in the environment, which shape the movements, responsibilities, and cultural practices of the Sámi throughout the year.
So the season starts in May when the reindeer babies are born. That's when our year starts. And then in the summer solstice, we have 24 hours of light. The sun doesn't go down. And that is about approximately 6 weeks. We have almost fully light all night. For us, it's very important. We sleep less this time. We are outside a lot. We store every vitamin of the sun and the light, because we know that 6 weeks of dark will come. And that 6 weeks of dark is more of a resting time, a reflection, and an integration.
Reindeer herding has traditionally provided the Sámi people with meat, fur, and transportation. More than a livelihood, it is an essential part of their cultural identity and heritage. Surviving in the extreme cold through 6 weeks of total darkness and 6 weeks of unending sunlight requires the Sámi to live in deep connection with the shifting cycles of nature. Their survival depends on generations of ancestral knowledge and traditions, shaped by a life marked not only by human rhythms, but by the more than human cycles of the Arctic world.
But living up there is that, for me, very natural, because we are really living in a landscape the landscape is holding us, but they also are depending that we are holding ourselves, that we are following the normal cycles, that we are deeply listening to what is the sky telling us, what is the moon telling us, what is the northern light telling us, how is the growth on the trees looking, how is the nature feeling, because that is a mirror how our community are feeling.
The deep observation of nature and listening to the voices of the more than human world is ingrained in Sámi tradition. It is profoundly linked to their livelihood and their culture.
So we live very strongly connected to the elements, and we have beautiful lakes, beautiful rivers, beautiful spring water, clear water we can drink from the mountains, that are sacred places that store us with. So we are very lucky, but at this moment we are not so lucky because it gets very polluted, and it's also they extracting and going in more, and we have to move our land. We have to move also the footprint of the reindeer, which is very confusing for them.
The impacts of human intervention and the climate crisis are impossible to ignore. As Grandmother Helen describes, the ecosystem of the Arctic Circle is especially sensitive.
You come so close to the top of the, how can you say, the Arctic Circle for me is the top of a baby, is the top of the head, of the crown, and that is sensitive. So the higher you come, the more sensitive the nature will be.
The top of a baby's head, a soft, vulnerable space, one that has been carved, dug up, exposed.
My grandfather, he built up this village, and my grandmother's family, and they were a part of this. This was my home, and this was my root.
She grew up in a full house with her grandparents as the youngest of 3 siblings. The village was quiet and full of elders, where she was one of the only kids. She remembers a life based in community.
My grandmother, she was the heart of the village, and my grandfather, he was the healer, he was the doctor. And in my family, we never expressed anything about that. It was just a living. It was very natural. People come to our house and they get help with different things.
Her family was deeply rooted in the village, and as she grew up, she remembers how the mining was felt in the home.
The whole house shake. And that goes going on, maybe. They're starting to test drilling in the village.
Although most of the mining projects arrived in the 90s, it all began more than 30 years before she was born.
They're starting to test drilling in the village because 1933, there was a farmer, relative to me, that was plowing his land for potato, and he hit the rock. And he took up the rock, and the rock was gold.
The word spread quickly, and soon the bulldozers, shovels, and trucks arrived. The drills stabbed through the earth's skin like uncertain daggers. Tunnels exposing her guts were built to extract minerals. Excavators dug up her insides, and since then have been taking and taking without looking back.
So they claimed a paper at 1933 that when the mineral was necessary to take, it would be there to take. So then the process starting, we objected, many people objected.
At that time, Sweden's mining activities were governed by the Mining Act of 1884, which allowed for mineral exploration and extraction with minimal consideration for indigenous rights. This legal framework facilitated the issuance of permits for mining operations without the need for comprehensive environmental assessments or consultations with the Sámi communities. Since then, the demand for metals such as gold, copper, lithium, cobalt, and other metals has only escalated. The technologies we use in our daily life, such as computers and cell phones, and other deadlier technologies like modern weaponry, all depend on these kinds of metals. And so, the mining in the Sámi territory has just grown and grown, despite their protests, despite their objections, despite the threat to their way of life.
But the thing is that I don't think they understand that we are the land. I don't think they understand how deeply they cut us apart by taking our properties, by taking our land, because it really goes so deep.
With the mining comes the displacement of local villages. It happens gradually. Roads, railways, and noise from machinery disrupt migration routes and grazing lands, while pollution and land loss make traditional herding increasingly difficult. pushing families away from their ancestral territories.
Because a land is so much more than a land. A land is the one who is holding us, that is transported through our blood, our bones, and our water. So it's not just the land that many people think. It's a part of us. And I think that was the most difficult. Today, the village is totally blown up. It's nothing left. It's just a black hole. It's an open mine for copper and gold. And it's a mining that will sustain 8 to 10 years. In my family, we say we are a reflection of our territory. So if we take care of our territory with love, it will flourish with love. And it will stand there and it will be there. So it's like we're seeing humanity, and we can see that humanity is really a reflection of the climate, what's happening, how humanity is feeling inside, climate is showing us.
While the displacement of the Sámi people takes place, the impacts on the more than humans that live there are already evident.
What we rather fast saw that the ecosystem of the trees starting to change. They're starting to grow in another way. Some trees starting to die, so the year go by. And we lost more and more berries, more and more natural things that grows in the forest.
But as these stories so often go, the exploitation of the land goes hand in hand with the erasure of indigenous identities. Like many other Sámi, she grew up with what she calls a split identity, torn between the traditions of her ancestors and the pressures to assimilate into a society that refused to see her culture as equal.
We had a split identity with Swedish, Sami, and also Quen people. So, and two other minorities people. So, and Christianity and the religion that called Lesbianism was very strongly in my family. So it was very also silent about many, many things.
As the only indigenous peoples in the European Union, the Sami have long faced pressure to assimilate. In Sweden, Swedification policies began in the 1800s and lasted well into the 1970s. These included forced conversion to Christianity, the enforcement of Swedish as the only language in schools, and a systematic suppression of Sami culture and traditions. Children were separated from their families to attend boarding schools. Reindeer herding was regulated by outsiders, and racial biology studies were conducted to classify and control the Sami population.
So I learned the biggest language in the world, the silent language, the communication beyond the words. That in my youth was a very, very difficult language, and today is a very, very beautiful language, and that I also bridge others to learn.
This is a silence she no longer fears. As she grew older, grandmother Helen began to recognize the depth of her heritage.
As like my grandmother on my mother's side, they come from the forest Sami. My grandmother on my father's side, they come from the reindeer herders. And I have both the forest and the reindeer herder in my blood. I starting to see pattern of me when I did this research, and also coming in contact with people that are my family, but also seeing how hidden my culture was in my family because of fear.
Grandmother Helen began to understand the vast spectrum of silence. There is the silence of fear, the silence of forced erasure, displacement, assimilation. But in her culture, there is another kind of silence, the silence that exists in connection to the more than human world.
In the winter, when the northern light comes, my grandmother always said to me, I always wanted to talk because it's so beautiful. I wanted to describe what I saw, but she was like, no, 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 no. You have to listen because it's coming with a message. They are coming here to tell us something. It's really so profound. It's really like, it's so deep. And that silence you learn to listen to because it has a voice. It's the wind, it's the trees, it's everything.
It is the kind of silence that resists erasure.
It is one of the biggest language that can be very scary, very terrifying, very beautiful, very breathtaking, very healing, very profound and just loving. But it has both sides. Everything in life is about energy, to find the core of that. But it's very, very important that for us in our community, its silence is really present. We don't have to speak. It's not about the words. And words is also something that we see as energetic, as something we are learned not to misuse. Don't misuse the words because words has such a power. What we're saying to ourselves, what we're saying to others, how we are preparing with words, that's something that you are taught from when you're very, very little, that words are precious.
But learning how to listen and how to interpret the silence of the more than human world was something Grandmother Helen came to later in life. At 37, after surviving a heart attack and battling depression, she realized that healing meant returning to her roots. It was then that she began to reconnect with the land, the stories of her ancestors, and the rhythms that had always guided her people.
And then my journey started with so many experience, so many deep teachings beyond the words from the ones who've been here before. Connection with nature, connection with my ancestry, connection with the earth spoke very clearly to me what she wanted and what she needed. And first, it was very overwhelming.
That was when she decided to engage fully in what she calls the spiritual path. Her father guided her. He told her,
You will go to the forest. And what will I do there? You will listen. And I went for over 2 weeks, went into the forest. And every day I came home and he said, Oh no, you're not listening, Helen. And I was like, I am listening. And he said, No, he's very silent, my father. He speaks more with his presence. The next week he sent me out as usual. And I was very tired. I was very angry. I was very emotional. Suddenly something happens. It was like the whole earth took me, the whole forest. Like I was embedded in by the forest. Like I had a coat of the forest around me and and I was sinking down to the earth. And then I came home and I didn't say nothing. And then he said, Oh, now you have listened.
along this path of discovery was that she arrived at the name of grandmother.
And then the word grandmother came, that and with respect, that I was Grandmother Helen. It was quite confusing in the beginning because I didn't feel so old in a way. And then I understand that it's a word of respect. It's a word of respect. So I'm down to deeply listening. That's one of the core, that it's not me guiding, it's the spirits, it's the earth, it's the one who've been here before, it's the trees, it's every living species. We are necessary to listen to what they want to tell us. And they are the one who seeking for help, seeking for support, and we are there for supporting them and for stewarding for them.
Grandmother Helen listens. But how does listening become a form of protection? How can it be a path forward when so much has already been lost? Her village, the place of her roots.
How do you come back after this? How do you find any kind of life force to even live and fight. And I'm not really the fighter. I think that I am more the one who is more fluid like water and trying to move into the human heart and the human living room to have responsibility and see what they're doing.
The exploitation of Sámi land is an intersection of interest. The economy, driven by mining companies, logging industries, and governments seeking profit and resources. The politics, where national interests often override indigenous rights. And the colonial legacy that continues to frame the land as empty or underused, rather than as a living territory sustained by centuries of Sámi knowledge and care.
Everyone is hunting for securing money, hunting to take out the most of it. They have no clue if they need these minerals in 8 to 10 years. They have no clue, but they just need to take them before someone else is gonna take them. And they have no empathy or humbleness of what do they do. It's not just to make a move and find a new place. This is your origin, where you come from.
While Sweden officially recognized the existence of the Sámi as a nation in 1989, it has yet to ratify the ILO, Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention, the only international treaty that specifically protects the indigenous rights to land and self-determination. The Swedish Sámi Parliament was established on January 1st, 1993, providing a platform for representation, but not real political power. Despite these formal acknowledgements, the invisibilization of Sámi rights persists.
We are facing separation. We are facing very hard with government. We are, in a way, ratified as European Indigenous People, but we have, in the political level, we have not so much to say. And there's also this, it is this Swedish government wants to sell out the lands for energy, for example.
In fact, taxes on minerals in Sweden are intentionally low to increase mineral exploration, of course, for economic benefit.
Swedish government wants to sell out the lands for energy, for example. It's always this different conflict of they want to take a territory to put up 300 wind parks or windmills, or they're selling out for mining, for rare minerals, for batteries. And we always have to be prepared. We are not in the relaxed mode where we can relax. Oh, now we have support.
Grandmother Helen knows there's no time to rest. Too much is at stake. Ironically, Sweden's low mineral taxes are justified under the banner of a noble goal, carbon neutrality. But the European Union's push to become carbon neutral by 2050 depends on technologies that require a surge in critical minerals, many of which lie beneath Sámi lands. Copper, nickel, cobalt, lithium, and rare earth elements are all essential for building wind turbines, electric vehicle batteries, and solar infrastructure. The race for these resources is reshaping the North, turning ancestral Sámi territories into extraction zones for the green transition.
The green shift is the green colonialism. The green shift creates more needs. It doesn't create less needs, it creates more material. And the scarcity is that it creates so much material that we don't know how to recycle this material. That's the next question for the future. So I think that we are in a very, very negative circle of how we're thinking. I think it's important that we as human beings starting to rethinking, because it's not the planet who damage us. We are the humanity that is taking apart the planet.
The green transition becomes green colonialism. If a more sustainable future depends on displacing indigenous peoples, disregarding their knowledge and ways of life and causing direct harm on the environment, then there is no future. As Grandmother Helen says, it is a negative circle of thinking.
European Union needs to implement more dialogues, taking in and respecting the Sámi people as the indigenous people of Europe, which we are not really fully, from my opinion, not fully seen.
Meanwhile, the Sámi people are organizing through legal action, political advocacy, and daily resistance to defend their lands from the growing push for mineral extraction in the name of carbon neutrality. They are challenging mining permits in court, mobilizing through Sámi parliaments and youth groups, and staging peaceful protests at key sites.
I think I'm in the best to be on the floor and awakening the ones that are in the political realm if it's necessary, and to being the bridge. So I think that is something that I think we have different roles, and I think it's starting to fall out more and more. I know speakers that also feeling into that I need to speak in another way. And I think the language is starting to change. And it's also about courage. It's about having the right to say, because we are also taking away the voice. So there's always this silence from us, and the kind of thinking we are a small people, we are not so many, but we are strong. We are strong.
From a childhood in a quiet village to a spiritual awakening that led her to become a voice for her people, Grandmother Helen has walked the path woven by both loss and reclamation.
What I gained was when I lost the village, I became very angry. I became very in my hate, and it just took me down. And it will not serve my grandchildren, and it will not serve my tradition and my heritage, and it will not serve the ones who will come after me. But I feel this is my obligation for my grandchildren. This is my obligation for my people. This is what I can do for the land. This is what I can do. And I can only speak from my heart, from my family, what I experience, and hold it very grounded and authentic.
In answering her calling to speak and carry the knowledge of her people, Grandmother Helen stands firm, even as the exploitation of her land and the weight of this responsibility challenge both her community and her own life. Yet, she remains hopeful. In the younger generations, she sees not just continuity, but the possibility of renewal.
I see the hope in the youth, the movement of the youth, in the Sámi people, the youth, that's now getting stronger and stronger, but globally over the world, these young, beautiful sisters and brothers who really, really resonating and really, really speaking and bridging and fighting for the existence of being in a healthy environment. So I have definitely hope. I have hope as long as we support the youth, as long as we also don't forget our roots, our ground, and that our being who we are, that we don't, starting to change ourselves.
Grandmother Helen continues to find hope and grounding as she guides others towards a path of connection with the more than human world. For her, listening is resistance. It is a way to remember, to reclaim, and to care for the land even when it has been scarred. Through listening, she holds a space for what remains and speaks for what cannot speak for itself. When in doubt, she always goes back to that moment in the forest, where guided by her father, she began to deeply listen. And now, she holds that space for others, that belief that we can do that too. We can deeply listen to the more than human world that sustains us.
When the forest embraced me and when the earth embraced me with a breath, I realized that we are so much more than in this human body. We are a creation of Mother Earth and Father Sky, and we are connected through the heart. And that is the source. And that is the source of Mother Earth, and that's the source of us. So I think that what I want to say with this is that It's never too late to look at your roots. It's never too late to go home.
Crossing the River is a podcast from the More Than Human Life program MOTH, based at the Center for Human Rights and Global Justice at NYU School of Law and 070 Podcast. Thank you to Grandmother Helen Lindmark for sharing your words and deep listening with us. This episode was co-created by Carlos Andrés Vaquero Diaz for MOTH, Natalia Arenas, and me, Goldie Levy. The sound design and mix was made by Andrés Villegas. The images of this podcast are made by Nefasta. The music is from Cosmo Sheldrake. If you want to learn more about this project, please visit mothlife.org. Thank you for listening.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.